Okay, folks, it is 7 o'clock. This is the Enfield Planning Board. We are meeting tonight in the DPW conference room. And we also have several guests who are joining us virtually on Teams, Microsoft Teams. If there's anybody in the audience here who has not signed the sign-in sheet, I can ask you to do so now. That having been said, we're calling the meeting to order at 7:01. And we'll take a introduction or roll call to our members from my left.
Hi, I'm Kate Plumley Stewart. I'm the select board rep.
Dan Kylie, vice chair.
David Frack, obviously on the chair.
Phil Vermeer, secretary. Brad Rich, member.
We have two alternates.
Jim Bond.
And
Whitney Banker,
Yeah,
and
Whitney.
I'm also the recording secretary.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so if Jim and Whitney would consent to being elevated to voting members tonight, we have a full board of 7 members for tonight's hearing. On our agenda, if anyone has a comment on any subject other than the gravel pit hearing, now is the time to address your comments to the board. Is there anyone here who has any comments other than the gravel pit hearing? People listening on Zoom, do you have any comments other than the gravel pit? I'm thinking not. The people who are joined virtually, could you please mute yourself now if you have not already done so? Okay, select board report. Kate.
Our select board meeting was very short. We went through the appointment of inspectors of the election. That probably took the most time, just getting them into the right slots. Some of them are done by party, and if the party doesn't, they volunteer. So that's taken care of. We had planning board application, and I see that he's here. So obviously he got approved. Thank you, Brad, for volunteering. This is a plug for, we always have committee spots, and we're excited to have volunteers. So you guys are all welcome to volunteer and take a look at what's available. We had a body worn and dashboard camera grant that was done by Public Safety. That was approved. We tabled the mask policy discussion for an upcoming meeting in favor of having all 3 board members present, and took in a donation to Lakeside Park that was generous. So a few administrative items, and I think that's pretty much it for a short meeting. Any questions?
Okay. Next, public hearing. P22-07-01, Conkey Enterprises LLC of Canaan, New Hampshire, has applied for a gravel pit permit to reopen a gravel pit located on Bog Road, formerly operated by Green Links Construction of New London, New Hampshire. The parcel in question is in the R5 Residential Agricultural Zoning District. It's 95 acres and further identified as tax map 1 lot 10. Before we get going, let me kind of explain the procedure for these public hearings so that everybody knows what happens. The first thing is we're going to have Art come up and explain in his own words what it is that he wants to do with this tract of land. The board will have an opportunity to ask questions, and we will get as much information from him as we can. Once the board has asked all of its questions, we will ask any other town boards if they wish to make any comments or ask any questions. Jerry, I think you're here representing Conservation Commission tonight? Okay, so you'll come after the board. And after that, we will open it up for questions from the general public. There's a lot of people here tonight. I'm going to ask that you identify yourself by your name and where you live, a street, and if you're not in Enfield or in the Eastman development, please let us know what town you're in. I would like for people to keep their remarks relatively short so that everybody has a chance to make their comment. If somebody, actually, let's say if three people have made the same comment that you've made, I would ask that you just say, I agree with the previous comments regarding whatever. I'd like everybody to give all of your neighbors the courtesy of speaking once before you raise your hand for a second crack.
Your computer, I think, is locked.
Oh,
You can move it to the side.
yeah, let me put it here. Is that better?
I think so.
Okay. After everybody in the room has had a chance to speak and make their position known, we'll go to the people who have joined us virtually and see what they have to say. So what we are here for is a gravel pit permit. A gravel pit permit is a document that is issued by the town of Enfield, and it's in conjunction with a state issued permit. The purpose of the permit basically is to make sure that certain dimensional requirements are adhered to, that there is a reclamation plan in place. And it also gives our assessing department some information that they need in order to tax the gravel that is taken out of the pit. So that having been said, Art, would you come up and tell us what you're going to do?
Hello, those of you who don't know me, my name is Art. I am the owner of Conkey Enterprises, which is owned and operated Conkey Bog Road Pit over 20+ years. It is one of the three major pits that has supplied the majority of the material for the Eastman.
Art, excuse me, could you address the board, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Guy.
All right. Anyway, like I said, we're one of the three major pits down on the Bog Road that have supplied the majority of the material to the Eastman, Springfield, Enfield Center area for the last, 30+ years. Probably longer than that. I've been operating for over 20. We are currently in the process of slowly closing our pit, and I was able to purchase Hastings Pit, which due to his passing away, it had been vacant for more than 2+ years, and nobody had started reclaiming it. So that's why we have to reapply for this permit and stuff, because if it sits more than 2 years. So I wish to reopen the pit. It has been in operation for longer than I've been around this area.
And how long,
At least
how
30
long would
plus
that be?
Well, it's been in operation for over 25 years.
Research that the town has provided me with
Mhm.
says it was first opened in the 1960s.
Yes,
You have any reason to doubt that?
no, it's just like my pit. I mean, I've been operating, but it was an operational pit when I purchased it as well. So all those pits, I believe, are from the 60s.
Okay, so let's, Rob, can you put the map up on the screen for us? And I'd like Art to, as soon as we get it. No, we don't have it on the screen. Okay. Take a short pause. Everybody on the planning board has this map? So while Rob is getting that, graphic, to the point where he can put it up on screen, I just want to kind of say to everybody here that according to New Hampshire law, RSA 155E, gravel pits that are in operation prior to August 24, 1979 are grandfathered. That means they have the right to operate a gravel pit until they extract all the gravel that they want to. What we do as the planning board, being the responsible agency or responsible party, is we look at things like access to the pit area, visual barriers, slopes of the excavation, the height of the water table, setbacks from the pit to property lines, the duration of proposed excavation, and the amount of material to be removed every year. That, of course, is a tax issue. So those are the things that we can really talk about tonight. And whether a pit belongs on this property or doesn't is for an authority with a higher pay grade than we get. And also for your information, a gravel pit is a special exception in the R5 district. So if somebody wanted to open up a new gravel pit in the R5 district, they would have to go to the zoning board of adjustment, make application, and the ZBA would decide yay or nay in terms of opening up a gravel pit. So now that we got the graphic back up there, and Art, can you explain what you want to do? And
Okay,
I
well,
think Rob can point with the mouse.
the yellow represents the area that is open on the gravel pit currently. That is already open. The pink is material that's already stockpiled. The orange represents where we're going to expand the pit up to. The yellow is currently 300 feet from the nearest water. The orange, where we're going to expand it, is up to 100 feet away from the nearest water. The entranceway, you can see it's a narrow entranceway off of the bog road. It's in behind people, so, you know, there's not a lot of visual to it. So there's not,
Right there.
right, yeah, so there's not much impact as far as from the bog road, as far as looking in.
Town line to Springfield.
That's a town line to Springfield,
This is-
and yes, and there's a town line to Grantham. Also, because portion of the property is in Grantham, but it's nothing that we're using for the pit. The only part of the pit we're using is that small section down there.
Okay, how about the rest of the land? You got, what, 95 or so acres?
The rest of the land, we're just leaving vacant. We're going in now, we're cutting it, and then we're gonna leave it and let it grow up. The Eastman Association did call me about perhaps having water rights, which we have postponed because of some feedback on this part. So that's kind of off the table right now.
Okay. Board members, any questions for the applicant?
Got another area of green down there in the lower part. Is that part of your old gravel pit? I mean pink. Down below that other pink dot.
No, that's other stockpiles he has.
That was
that
part
are
of
on the
our property as well.
Yeah, that's all stockpiles that are down there now. That stuff he had processed.
Okay, so that's available.
Yes,
Has been
well,
taxed
it's already been taxed. It's already been taxed since it's excavated.
Okay.
No, he has a road because he used to have a pit down there as well. He had actually 3 pits he had on this property.
So 2 of those pits have been closed and reclaimed?
Well, they're partially, they are not reclaimed, no,
Okay,
no. That nothing here has been reclaimed.
so what sort of material, I'm sorry, Dan, go ahead.
What are you talking about as a total area that you're gonna be working on with this?
I have that written down. Do you have that? I know it's on the application that we did.
It's like 6.
I think it was 6 open and we were expanding it to 12, I think, or something of that idea.
That rings a bell.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think it's 12.
Any other board members have questions right now? The area that you're gonna be working in,
Yes,
what sort of material is there that you're gonna be taking out?
sand and gravel. The coarse sand and a coarse small gravel.
So I guess we've covered access and visual barriers. What kind of slopes going into the pit do you envision? Or what kind of slopes are existing?
Currently, the slopes, I think, I didn't actually look at the pit much on the other side of the brook yet. That's one that we will end up closing. I think that one might be a little steeper. We're probably gonna end up with about 3 to 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So according to, I think it's town regs, slopes that are 1 to 1 or steeper require some sort of fencing as a protective measure, but your maximum slope is
Yeah,
3 to
we're
1.
gonna do about 3 to 1.
I know you gave us some data on the height of the water table. Do you happen to remember, what your test pits showed?
When we did the test pit on the lower section of the open pit, we were down about 10 feet before we hit water.
And how long is it gonna take you to use up all the material on these particular pits?
Well, this one here, like we're talking, it's been open since the sixties. So it's been 60 years roughly now. I currently have two other pits, fairly local also. So, you know, this could be 50, 60 years. It's not something that there's gonna be 100 trucks a day hauling it.
Do you have an idea of how many yards you'll be taking out annually?
No, I know we put in for a very small amount this year. I don't even remember what it was.
It's 500 yards.
500 yards. Yeah, it was small. It's just, you know,
Can-
basically, I mean, what this is, this particular pit has like a course of sand, which is more for in between your septic beds. So it's not something you gotta put around a house. It's not something you're gonna use for that. So it's not like it's gonna be used majority. I'm still trying to use the other bog road pit, which I'm trying to actually finish and reclaim. So we're concentrating much heavier on that one than we will be this.
Mhm.
And then as far as stone products, we also have a pit over in Springfield, which was used during the, building of the, Springfield rest area. So it has all the ledge that was moved off that. So therefore, we'll probably get all of our rock products from that pit rather than from this one. So there's probably not a real lot to come out of this pit, maybe for many years.
Can you translate the number of yards into roughly the number of truckloads over the course of the year?
They get 15 yards per truckload, so, you know, I guess that's the easiest one.
So 15 into 500.
3,300.
33
Yeah.
trucks this year. 33
33
truckloads
this
a
year.
year, this year.
This year, yes,
So not even one week.
right.
That's not many.
No. Well, actually, currently, there is quite a large amount of material that is already there
Yeah.
that I could have been hauling out, but I
Mhm.
haven't hauled anything out of it. Because it's more like demand.
Yeah. How about any crushing operations? Do you anticipate having a crusher there?
Maybe further on down, you know, years from now. You know, but as of right now, I have a very large amount of product in my bog road pit that I can crush right now. And then I also have a lot in the Springfield pit.
Mhm.
And actually the bog road pit, I'm sorry, the 475 bog road pit, that one there, which I'm trying to reclaim, I've probably got, I would say maybe 5 to 10 years worth of product that I could crush up now. So I wouldn't even have to go up here. And from what I've seen up here, I haven't really seen hardly anything up there to crush. You know, most of the stuff is smaller, it doesn't really need crushing.
Uh-huh. Of course, as you expand the pit, that could
Right.
change.
Yes, right, it could change, yes.
But from what
Right.
from what I hear you saying, in the immediate future,
Right,
you
Right.
you won't have any crushing operations
Right.
going
right.
on. Any more questions from board members?
Are you gonna be bringing in screening equipment at all?
I probably will screen at some point.
Yeah.
That I will.
All right, from the Conservation Commission. Dr. Fee.
Tonight, and I just want to point out that, Conservation Commission sent a letter, registered, certified, current receipt request, just a copy on July 15th, requesting permission to go onto his property and look at a beaver dam location, wetland that he noted on his map. Supposed services for me that the company could be better.
Terrible. Oh,
Some of
moderator,
the
turn it off.
issues that we are reporting. I also mentioned in the letter a copy of which track received. Then on page 28, 31, 43, and map 5 and 7 of the 2021 act for divorce intended for the copy. There are substantial environmental characteristics of map 1 lot 10 that are potentially at risk of being irreversibly damaged until there. Copy has been also.
This is a
So he has already removed a large amount of timber, which I assume is associated with opening up the area for his gravel. The other characteristic that I want to call your attention to is one that the state lists as a prohibited mining area, and that is on page 2-5 of the prohibited project. It says where the excavation would substantially damage a known aquifer as designated by the United States Geological Survey. That map that's on the board there shows the delineation of an aquifer that runs very close to the property of the company. That was done by the United States Geological Survey. And they pointed out that their degree of accuracy was somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 200 feet. So in addition to asking the planning board to recommend Mr. Coffey to allow us to come on his property and look at the wetland and the condition of the beaver dam, we are also suggesting to the planning board that they commission a geological survey, do some seismic tests to see how far into Mr. Coffey's property that aquifer extends. That's all I have to say. And that is the Conservation Commission certification.
You wish to respond?
Well, first of all, there is no beaver dam down there. What we had was
Can you speak louder?
okay. There is no beaver dam down there. What we had a clogged up culvert, which we cleaned the culvert out. So that's that part of it. And as far as allowing people on property, I got 2 rules. Rule number 1, if you post your property, stay off mine. Rule number 2 is when somebody has had a problem with their neighbor on this, I think we all know where this is going, that I didn't want to have problems with my property. I know conservation, I guess there was a couple issues with the neighbor to Jerry. And that, I guess, ended up being pretty bad, so therefore I didn't want to have the same issue.
At this point, I think we'll open it up to questions and comments from the audience. Again, I'd like all questions and comments should be directed to the chair, to me. And then if necessary, I will ask Mr. Conkey to respond. And again, please introduce yourself, your name, street you live on, and the town. Gentleman in the back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some things I'd like to provide to the board.
Your name, please?
Sorry. My name is Barry Cunningham. I live at 34 Spring Valley Drive in Grantham, East, and I'm an abutter. May I approach?
Please.
It would be helpful too if we could put the survey map back up.
Okay.
I have it on.
If not, we can share.
If not, the
Back them down. We can share. Let's see. Take one, I think we got enough. We got enough.
Great.
feel free, Barry, if you want to point out something.
Sure. And so this letter will become, Rob, part of the record, is that right?
Yes.
All right. All right, so first I'd like to thank you for hearing us out. And with all due respect to Art, I'm requesting that the board deny the application. And the first reason I'm asking the board to deny the application is because the doctor was trying to point out that it sits on an aquifer or near an aquifer, and it does. And in fact, this very area here that's being proposed is right smack in the middle of the aquifer. So, and how do you know that? If you turn to page 2. Better. This is a copy of a map that I got from the state. Can't get online. I had to get it straight from the director of geology at the state of New Hampshire, and worked in conjunction with the director of alteration of terrain division. And the white shaded area you see on number 2, it actually shades the very area. The blue line is the stream. The white line to the right is Bog Road, and in the middle is the proposed gravel pit. So it sits right on top of the aquifer. If you turn to page 3, this is a provision of 155E. And the highlighted area says the regulator shall not grant a permit where the excavation would substantially damage a known aquifer so designed by the United States Geological Survey. So the question then is, all right, so if this is right on top of the aquifer, how do we know it does or doesn't get damaged? Well, according to the AOT, trying to get this right all the time, the alteration of terrain division director, that would all be ferreted out and get a permit applied to the state, which is required here, by the way, and it hasn't been applied for yet by the state because it's more than 100,000 square feet. As you testified to it, there's about 6 acres, and that's way over the 100,000 square foot minimum requirement. There was some discussion about the idea of grandfather, not grandfather, and whether or not what is needed or not needed under the statutes, if in fact there's a grandfathering in. And my read of it, I think I'm correct on this is not a grandfather situation. The fact that it was a pit since the 60s is totally irrelevant because of its dormancy. I found in the town records the last time that an activity report was provided to the town, I guess you all call it report of excavation material. The last activity that was formally recognized by the town and taxed was in March of 2016. So it's been 6 years. And as you know, the statute is 2 years. So when there's been a dormancy of 2 years or longer, according to the AOT director, it triggers a whole new application, which is why the town and Rob required the application. That was the appropriate thing to do. But that also brings with it the waterfall of things that are required under the statute. And one of which I think the biggest is it's right in the top, right, literally on top of the aquifer. So that's my first point. My first point is that it should be denied because the property is on top of an aquifer. I cite the specific language in my point number 1, and I talk about the grandfather clause issue. There was also some discussion about a Supreme Court decision that established a two-part test that said if a pit is abandoned under the statute, if you read the plain reading of the statute, then after 2 years, it's now a new permit and all the new stuff is required. But the Supreme Court articulated a second prong that says, well, what was the intent? Was it intended? Well, obviously it wasn't intended. Mr. Hastings died. But the activity report showed that this has been inactive formally. I mean, maybe there was stuff going on, but it's been inactive formally since 2016. So we're way past the 2 years. So when you understand that, it just defaults back to it's a new permit and everything that's requisite within the statute is required of the permit. Second reason I think it should be denied is the application is incomplete. There's no reclamation plan. And also in the statute, I've included in my letter, the language that's required for reclamation plan. It's very detailed. And again, with the involvement of the state permit, this would all be rectified, by the way. They would figure out that, the first thing, according to the director, the first thing they're going to do is look at this aquifer issue. Is there an issue with impact on the aquifer? And then finally, and this is maybe, I have that there's no state permits. Now, as a practical matter, you would go to apply to that until you got through here. But I haven't heard talk in all of the discussions that I've had a lot with lots of different people from Ron to people in Eastman and Steve. You all know. There's been no discussion about the need to go to the state. And there's clearly a need on the statute to go to the state. So with that, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, before you sit down, any questions from board members to Mr. Cunningham?
Yeah, I guess the final thing I really want to really bring home. I get this idea that it's been in operation for years and years and years and years. But as of today, where we are today, this is a new ball game under the full stand No, not a grandfathering issue, despite, I understand the practical look, it's been around since the 60s. But this is a new application. It's a new gravel pit application requiring all the statutory mandates.
A couple of questions for you. One is, you said that you had researched in the town records and you have a document that says that the last reported activity was in 2016.
I do.
Can we have a copy of that?
Yes, you can right here.
Great.
And in that 2016 year, Mr. Hastings has said that the excavation area remaining was around 2.4 acres. That looks about right when you ballpark it, which is also how you get to the 6 acres that's being proposed. And in that year, 4,500 yards was pulled from it. And they were all like that when I went back to 2012. They were all kind of like that. It's pretty relatively small numbers, I guess, from what I'm told. All right, that's it.
And for the record, at the beginning of the hearing, I did say that the town permit was issued in conjunction with state permit. And it's our practice as a board and probably enshrined in state law that, yes, he has to come to us first, but we condition the approval of his permit from the town upon receiving permit from the state. So
Gotcha.
we are aware that a state permit is required, and whatever we decide, we know that a contingency of a state permit exists.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if I meant,
No problem, no problem. Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else have comments? Mr. Schneider?
Yeah.
Good to see you, Steve.
Steve Schneider, 55 Even Chance Road, Enfield, New Hampshire. You're representing Eastman Community Association as their general manager, chief executive officer. I do have a letter that I will share with you after I get through this. And it details a number of concerns that we have with the application that was submitted and available to the public, both back in July and recently. This survey that you're sharing with the board and the community and the public this evening is new. And it hasn't been reviewed or seen or available, to my knowledge, up until just very recently. So a lot of the questions that I have deal with the materials that were submitted and the concerns that we have that we can't really evaluate fairly the impact of this particular operation on the community members. And I'll share that letter with you. There are about 15 points that I've made. And they deal with, topography plan wasn't shared, test pit data wasn't shared. Those things are important for us to kind of really gauge what's intensity of the use, where it's going to happen, how close it is to butters and Eastman property. So this is great because this is an improvement from what was shared initially, but I think there are still some questions that we'll have if we're able to review this survey at a later date. One of the concerns that we have is that the reclamation plan needs to be a part of this application, and it hasn't been submitted yet. It's not something that is submitted after the fact. Certainly the reclamation happens after the fact, but the plan to do the reclaiming needs to be part of this application, and that's important.
We agree.
Because this land is there forever, and our neighbors want to make sure that it's restored properly. So we would respectfully request that, the town require Mr. Conkey to submit this reclamation plan as part of this application. And don't approve anything or make any decision until you've actually seen it. And that's true with really all of the concerns that I've identified with the application materials. Aside from that, there are a few other points that I'd just like to be able to share with the board and the audience here. The proximity of the pit to our community and the equipment that's used is not necessarily normal for a residential area, right? So the truck traffic is a concern for us. And we would ask that, no trucks utilize Eastman infrastructure unless they have a specific purpose for being within Eastman. We would ask that the board make that a condition of any consideration that you have. We ask that this pit just be that any activity that occurs at this potential location, that there wouldn't be any storing of outside materials. This doesn't become a contractor's yard, that it doesn't become a graveyard of big equipment. As Mr. Cunningham said, this thing sits right on top of an aquifer, and that aquifer is the main, in fact, the only water source for the Eastman, the Village District of Eastman, the utility water and sewer utility company that supports our community. So it's extremely important that that aquifer be preserved, and storing of outside materials or equipment is a legitimate and fair concern of ours, and we would ask that whatever is on that site only comes from that site, and the equipment that's used is only used to extract the materials there. We would ask that if the board is so inclined to go down the path of approval, that they limit kind of the hours of operation, because as I stated before, this does abut dozens of residences. And I think it's only fair to limit potential impact on them to normal business hours. So Monday through Friday. This shouldn't be a 7-day-a-week operation, 6 in the morning until 9 at night, summertime. I think our folks, certainly the folks that live on the, let's say, south side of the property, you know, it's rural and pristine, and any impact from noise wise is gonna be a concern for them. We also asked that the board, I know Mr. Conkey mentioned that crushing may occur in the future, that if crushing does occur, that it be limited as well to just 1 day a week, that this doesn't become a crushing operation. That it stay as an excavation operation. As you all are aware, Dr. Tice alluded to it as well, that this property is located within a state of New Hampshire identified wildlife corridor. And we would ask that you do seriously consider the request of the Enfield Conservation Commission to evaluate and comment on the potential impacts that this excavation may have on this corridor. You know, we have some real concerns about the intensity of this operation. You know, Mr. Cunningham mentioned that they took 4,500 yards in a year. That's a lot different than 500 yards. 30 trucks a year versus 9 times that, 270. This is not a all year round operation. The need for these materials is limited, and so it's going to be intense. So it's unclear as to what the future intensity is going to be. So we would ask that the board require Mr. Conkey to be a little more specific in terms of what years 2 going forward would be. Just a few other points. It has been common practice in the past for local police departments to utilize pits of this nature for firearm training. And we would ask that this not be an allowed use. It is too close to residential neighbors, and it is a popular hiking area for Eastman residents. In that southeast corner, you can see there's an area that we call Frog Pond. And it's, you know, a beautiful, pristine natural area that is popular for the residents in that area. And firearm training in the proximity, that pit, just, it doesn't go, they don't go hand in hand. So we would ask that you not allow any firearm training to occur there. The aquifer, as I mentioned before, is important, and our position is that it's Mr. Conkey's responsibility to demonstrate that the activity that he is proposing isn't going to impact that aquifer. And we don't have any data to support that at this moment, so we're asking you require him to prove to us and to you that the activity is not going to impact the aquifer, because it is, as I said, it is the main water source for our community. So in closing, we just ask that you address these deficiencies in the application. We are unable to adequately determine the true impact of this application on our community. And so we just ask you support our positions and really require the applicant to fully fulfill what the application requires.
Thank you, Steve. Art, any comments?
Well, I don't know where to start on which one.
Did you-
First of all, you got the wrong pit as far as the police department practice.
I didn't say that.
That obviously has been in the past. That was at Mr. Craig's pit because obviously his grandson was the police chief. So, you know, that was that. Well, I don't believe it was at this pit, not at my pit. As far as trucks going through Eastman, no offense, but anybody would be an idiot to go through Eastman. I mean, the roads are all sharp, they're hilly, you got speed bumps, it's a nightmare for a truck. I mean, unless you gotta go in Eastman, you're not gonna go through Eastman. I mean, we go out 114 to go to Grantham, I mean, we don't go through Eastman.
That's fine, Mr.
Yeah.
Cocky. So if you're fine with conditions that say no trucks through Eastman and no
Yeah.
firearm training. think
Yeah, I
that's-
mean, I think you guys even have a rule for that anyway, that the no trucks are supposed to go through Eastman.
It hasn't stopped trucks from coming through the community, so that's why we're making the point tonight.
We don't do it, and currently, I mean, my pit is at the end of Bear Drive. So in the last 20+ years, I haven't been doing it, so I'm not gonna start now. You know, I'm closer to Eastman now than I am with this pit. So, I mean, that's that. I mean, I don't know what the other, I mean, so that's your shooting and that's your truck driving. I don't know what else
It's
was
a
on.
reclamation.
The hours of operation, I mean, I have enough problems trying to get guys to work at 4 o'clock, so you ain't gonna worry about working, especially on a Sunday or anything of that idea. I
So
mean,
you
we
wouldn't
don't do,
mind having a
no,
condition that
No,
sets
that-
up this
that's
happen
fine.
Monday through Friday.
right, that's fine.
8 to
We
4
do
is
that,
better.
you know,
I think we should get in the habit in this town of
Right.
limiting businesses.
yeah.
Nope.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, so, I mean, that's that. I don't know what else was on the list there.
Mr. Snyder had mentioned lack of data in terms of.
I thought I did do something about
I
a
thought I saw
reclamation
it, too.
permit. I
Well,
did. I thought I was talking about reclaiming it as a pond. I think that was, didn't I fill that out on the application?
I think there
I
was
thought I
a
did.
check
I have
mark,
that.
but it
Yes, I
wasn't,
thought I had
it
that.
wasn't a
Everything is
specific
checked
link.
on the
Yeah.
plan, but that doesn't mean that there's
Yeah.
actually information.
Right.
To.
Yeah, I think we were gonna reclaim it as a pond. So it's kind of like our current pit, how we have a large pond. That way we have, if there is any settlement draining, it drains it into the pond, so it does not leave the site. Especially where we have a brook or whatever, so we were gonna have everything drain into the pond, so nothing ever leaves the site.
There's a
Which is
comment on a
currently
piece
what
of
we have.
paper that says pit claimed as pond.
Yeah.
That's not planned. That's just a
It's,
comment.
it's a goal, it's aspirational, so I think we would want to see something a little bit more detailed. And as an example, your pit neighbor basically across the street,
The old crate.
the old crate pit.
Yeah,
Uh,
Donnie's pit,
She,
yes.
she put together what we thought was a really nice plan.
Yep.
And, if you don't have a copy of it, I'm sure Rob would
Mhm.
be happy to give it to you. And, I think something along that line in terms of how it's presented
Mhm.
would be a
Okay.
lot more informative to the board and to any of your abutting neighbors and the Eastman community. So if you could get that from Rob and pull together something, I think that would be
Okay.
appreciated
Mhm.
and should be included as part of the application.
Okay.
I believe I heard Mr. Schneider ask about what you are going to do to protect the aquifer. I'm reasonably certain that somewhere I saw data on your test pits and how far down it was to the water table.
Yes, we went down 10 feet till we had water at the lowest level, which is probably about roughly 40 feet higher than where we plan on digging. Yes,
At 40 feet higher.
yes.
Steve, did you get that information?
I'd love to be able to see it.
Are you telling us you didn't get the application?
I have the application materials here. See,
Rob, did you
Art,
provide
or
him
Rob,
with
can,
that?
can you point out
So
to
maybe
Steve
you
where
could help
that
Steve out for a
information is?
second.
There's a pencil sketch.
Pencil is a valid form of recording. I don't know, this is what it
It
looks
is?
like.
Yes.
This is, again, this is the diagram. This isn't test pit, this is a boring log, this is just somebody writing on a piece of paper, this is what they think is what it is.
Where did that data come from?
From us digging a hole with an excavator and measuring down.
Okay.
I appreciate that, towns want to be amenable to folks, making applications. Requirements can be onerous. Doesn't mean though that this should be adequate for the planning board to review. This, I can give you this and supposed to trust each other, but you know what? This is a little bit on the loose side for you to be able to make a decision. It's just a hand-drawn diagram. It says gravel and sand, and I'm sure Mr. Conkey did do the digging, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if I may say something, that's why the Conservation Commission is recommending that a geological survey, that they, seismic sig- evaluate depth and the extent of the aquifer in that land. Doing estimations. Working out stuff is not with tech job. That water not only provides seasonal, but it also drains and rain comes down to drains into other rivers that run down
Into the Atlantic Ocean.
contamination of those areas for whatever reason. Rather extensive aspect of the water quality in the
David, can I ask a question? Of course. Just so that I understand, so because I've had test pits done and measured before, and they've been done either by a surveyor or engineer in my case, but is there any legal requirement or that says the property owner can't do the measurements and document it? I'm just curious,
I
like
don't-
what the expectation
I
is.
don't know. Rob, do you have any?
Okay, because I'm new to this kind of item.
I believe this is gonna be a part of the state permit though. It's gonna be up to the state to decide on the aquifer. He's
Yeah,
going to have, which is why that's gonna be one of our commission conditions if we decide. Is he's going to have to get the state permit. A part of that is going to be them checking the aquifer.
Yeah, the state told me straight out, they're gonna go straight to the aquifer, figure that out, do some
Okay.
test boards.
Right, so they're gonna do test bores at that point,
So it doesn't make sense to tell the state how to do their job.
right.
because they're the one.
And we have no say in that,
Right,
basically.
right.
The state either says, yes, it's an approvable hit because it's not gonna impact the
Right.
aquifer, or they say no.
Right.
And if they say no, they don't issue the permit, and then our permit doesn't proceed to approval. If they say yes, they issue a permit, and then we issue and then we issue the town permit with any conditions additional. That make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
I mean, it's in the
Mr. Thacker.
application. In the town of Enfield application, test pit data or log of borings, on seasonal high water table or minimum 6 feet below the proposed excavation. That's, and it's checked as received.
Rob, have we received a log?
Just that.
Just the
hand
scale.
drawing.
So
Okay.
at the very least, we ask that the board postpone or continue this until you get some very basic data that you can make a factual decision.
I'm Shirley Green, 69 Algonquin Road, and I'm here as a Conservation Commission member. I'm also on the board of the Eastman Charitable Foundation. And I agree with the concerns adopted by Mr. Schneider and Mr. Cunningham very strongly. And it's particularly with the applicant. And very seriously. Stop there because they said.
The woman in back of the street.
I, Wendy Wormwood, 33 Hickory Overlook, and I butt directly, to both opening pit. A couple of items for me are, we never actually received a letter. It went to the previous owner who gave it to me. But I know the town has the right address because we keep getting the tax bill and it comes on time. So, there's that. I also know there are several other people that didn't get the letters as well. But also there is a Christy Wong that lives on Bob Road. She received a notice for the crate pit, but not this one. And she is right next to it, and her concern, she could not make it, because I just talked to her on Sunday. She didn't know about this meeting. Her concern was, again, she has a well directly in the back of her house, which backs up right to that pit. So the aquifer situation is affecting everybody that's on the Bob Road as well. So it would be nice if we could get the letters, to the people that didn't get them, Nicole didn't get one. That would be nice, and then it just reinforced what Steve had said and, Barry.
All right, let me try to explain some of this notification issue as I understand it. The town has several different databases of property owners. There's one that's, for tax purposes. There's another database that's tied into the town's GIS system. And that database is what is used to generate the abutters list. In other words, go on the computer, you select a property, and then the software will produce a list of names and addresses of all abutters within the town of Enfield. Unfortunately, that database is only updated once a year, and that may be part of the problem. And I have heard that there is at least some thought of changing that so that.
I can tell you that I did send, after you and I talked, I sent one to the address listed in our tax database, and it came back as undeliverable, so I don't know.
But you have to send it to our PO box. We don't get mail delivery, so I'm not.
So I took it right out of our tax database, so it was the one that we had on file. You're getting your tax.
Yeah.
Okay, so that.
I'm not sure. Christy didn't receive her, and
I just got it.
she just got it. Yeah.
We didn't get one, and we're butter.
Your name and then-
Okay, if I can steer the conversation back to the application, I recognize that the notification problem exists, and
Didn't Eastman communicate with you guys too, though? I mean, I've heard that.
Not our responsibility.
It's not your responsibility, but I've heard that you guys,
I'd like to hear the question answered.
Yeah.
With the answer no.
sorry, of
Did you communicate with them?
course we did.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
But
so. All right, I'll let you finish, and then we'll go on to someone else who will focus on the merits of the application itself.
yeah, and I wish Christy was able to be here, but she can't. She wasn't notified either, but also, I mean, yes, he may have talked to me, but that's because I called him, because I found out from somebody else, he told somebody else, so I think the train of information, just like a telephone, it degrades as the information goes, and I feel that the state also says that that's the responsibility of the applicant, but I just want people to know that they can attend, so that would be good if everybody goes on.
Okay. Gentleman in the blue t-shirt.
Yes, plan to replenish water. Could I just put this thing up on the screen again, please?
Yeah, Rob, can you put the map back up on the screen?
And, I got lot 90 and 89, Steve Conway's. Here, right next to us and all this. And, Mr. Conklin, you know, when you give your presentation, no, it's over here, but maybe over here. We're right here, right where these green lines, and when you fill out your application again, desire to, could you maybe give a buffer where you're never gonna come close to the green lines end?
As far as the excavating, we're never gonna go past the orange line. We're not going near.
It's in writing, you have that, or just say.
The word. I meant-
Well, yeah, that, it'll be a permit. So I'm only gonna be permitted for that large, and there's no way I'm gonna go get a permit to ever go across the water anyway.
And those
Right,
colors there are the key, right? So that if you are having trouble with the map, you look at the colors in the key and the green line says vegetation. I know it's a little small.
and we should note that, Rob, is it you or Liam that goes and inspects gravel pits? Our land use administrator is charged with making annual inspections of a gravel pit to make sure that all of the terms are complied with. And part of that inspection is making sure that the excavation is where the permit says it's gonna be, related to the map that is presented as part of the application, so. I think, you know, through the process and the enforcement process, the inspection process, if Mr. Conkey is indicating he's not gonna go beyond the orange area, if he does, that's where the town says, you're in violation of the permit, and takes whatever action is needed.
Also, by the way, there, if you look, there's a line right there, which is actually the town of Grantham, where it borders your property. So it's actually not even in Enfield, it's actually Grantham.
Anyone else like to make a comment? Mr. Cunningham?
I was just gonna suggest it's reasonable in light of everything that we've discussed here for the last hour or so, that you postpone on this until he has a complete application, and maybe getting the conservation guy in to do the, whatever the conservation guy does.
That's something that the board will consider when we deliberate.
Thank you.
Rob, can you put the virtual members back up?
I can.
Those of you who have been listening and watching on Zoom, if you have any comments or questions for Mr. Conkey or for the board, I think now is the time that we'll recognize you. If you have a comment or a question, raise your hand. No?
Yeah, you got one right there.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Todd Lloyd.
Todd Lloyd.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Todd Lloyd. I live in Eastman, I live in Grantham. And my question relates to a comment that Mr. Cunningham made at the beginning of the meeting when he alluded to the fact that if the pit was last used in 2016, that this is no longer an application that is grandfathered in, but is a new application. If does the board plan to make a determination on that? Because if it is in fact a new application, then what is required is a special exception, and that special exception would be handled by the Zoning Board of Adjustment rather than the Planning Board. So it seems to have a fairly important question as to what is the appropriate venue for this application.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Lloyd. given Mr. Cunningham's comment and your comment, I think determining if this is a continuing operation or a new one is something that the board will discuss as part of its, deliberative process when the public hearing is closed. So, yeah, we'll discuss it. I don't know how the board feels right now. But after we discuss it, we will reach a decision and decide if we proceed on this or if we kick it over to the ZBA. Anyone else? Okay. Final opportunity for questions or comments from the audience. Board members.
Are we able to get? I don't know how this gets at that, sure. I borrow one. It was one here in front of Kurt's. Got some more.
Yeah, why don't you take Kurt's?
Can I borrow Kurt's? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's now time to close the public hearing and the board will deliberate. Take a short recess. Art, thank you for your presentation and, feel free to sit back in the audience or stay there. You're welcome to go either way.
Don't have any classes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe some of these Eastern folks. Does anybody know who Tom Guest is up on this,
I'll ask him. Tom, he just left.
right there.
Get Bill.
Tom Lloyd? How about Bill Guest?
They're good.
We just need last name for the minutes. Wait, do you know who it is?
You need somebody to do this.
Right on the
Murray.
screen.
Last name Murray? That's Bill Murray? Really? Bill Murray.
We got them all here.
And how about Tom? Do you know who Tom is? He's waving. Tom, what's your last name?
Unmute yourself.
Shemansky, Shemanske.
There we go. Anybody else? Allison and Rich. Will you give us the last name? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Alison Findon, Findon, and Richard Smith.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Okay, are you coming back in session here? David?
Okay. So, I think maybe the first thing that we need to decide is whether this is an ongoing or something that's been abandoned.
Rob, I'd like to address that as the zoning administrator. It was my sort of ruling as the zoning administrator, land use administrator, that the zoning question was, this is a grandfathered use. And the reason for that is because of that two-part test, as Mr. Cunningham was alluded to earlier, that Supreme Court precedents has established. There's actually a really good primer if you want to read up on it, written by Bernie Woff, Lebanon law firm. That two-part test is that there's two things you need to do to abandon a use. Number one, you need to stop using it as you were using it. But then there's a number two, and that is to intentionally put it to a different use. Such as, and I'll give you an example that cut the other way for an applicant. We had a marina in town operating right by the Shaker Bridge for many, many years. And somebody bought the marina, stopped using it as a marina, and started using it as a single-family home. 2 years later, somebody else acquired that property and said, I want to reopen the marina. It's too late. That use had been abandoned because they had started using it as a single-family home. And so that satisfied that two-part test. I believe the same thing was true for the Shaker Museum, the in use there. Because that had not been put to a different use upstairs in the intervening years. They had used it as an inn, but it wasn't put to anything other than what it was. It was just sort of sitting there idle in place. So they were able to come and resume operations there after many years, by the way, of not using it as an inn. Because that space in that stone museum had been just sitting there, not put to any other use. I believe the Supreme Court decision was a case of a mobile home in a zone that did not allow mobile homes in the town. And they actually removed the mobile home from the site. And so somewhere along the line, somebody else came along, bought that piece of property, wanted to put a trailer back on that site, mobile home. And the town said no. And the Supreme Court agreed with the town because they had stopped using it for the mobile home. And they had intentionally removed the mobile home from the site, thereby satisfying the two-part test. So for the benefit of everybody here and everybody listening, it's really, there's two things involved. There's zoning and there's planning. The zoning, I think that's my ruling. Now, obviously, it can be challenged with the ZBA or at the Superior Court in terms of the zoning question, whether or not this is an allowed use in that zone, the R5 zone. But of course, there's also the planning, which these guys are talking about tonight. So there's obviously still that layer to be had. The gravel pit permit that Mr. Conkey has applied for, which obviously you guys have all heard tonight, and we've heard from abutters online and in person and representatives of Eastman. So I think that was my ruling, so to speak, and obviously anything that I rule can be challenged.
So-
Change.
Could be appealed.
No, but in light of what I said tonight, you're misinterpreting the status, the court case, so it's 6 years for it, a different situation. Right?
I don't think so. No, like I said, the same thing was the truth for the Shaker Museum. They use it as an inn. They stopped using it as an inn. Many years passed. They came back to us and said, we'd like to reopen again. Said, well, what have you done with that space that you're using as an inn in the intervening years? They said nothing. So we let them reopen the inn. There's an inn there now. You can go, stay.
With all due respect, you're misinterpreting the whole thing. Okay, let's go ahead. I'll be quiet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to ask Rob a question first, and I'll get to you, Kate. So when you made that ruling, were you aware of this report for the 2015 to 2016 tax year?
I was aware that it had been at least 3 years, because I've been here exactly 3 years. So I knew that it had not been an active gravel pit for at least 3 years. 16, even further back, but
Yeah,
again, Mr. Hastings did not intend to abandon the use. He died.
does not using it for a number of years prior to the time that he passed away, is that abandonment? In your judgment?
Doesn't satisfy that two-part test. Again, as I said, just because he didn't file a report, he may have been in there up until the time of his death, digging. I don't know. I wasn't there. This was before my time in Enfield, but I'm just going with the very clear opinions of the Supreme Court in the documentation that I've read. And I also talked to a former land use administrator for Enfield, who absolutely agreed with my opinion on that as well. Very clearly. And I said, it's cut both ways here in town. We've had some that have worked out well for an applicant and some that haven't. As I said, the marina is a case where the applicant lost out because they had intentionally put it to a different use.
Okay, I'd like to ask Mr. Cunningham to give a little bit more detailed explanation of why you think it's a misinterpretation of the statute.
Because of what it feels like is the conflation, is like, well, we'll lean back on grandfathering because we really want to approve. You know, or an individual might really want to approve, let's lean back on the grandfather, but it's in the statute. It's very clear that it's either or, it's categorical. It's not like, well, you know, okay, it's once the 2 years happens, okay, it breaks, but we had even better evidence. It wasn't being taxed and demonstrated as being an operating pit since 2016. So it's been 6 years in the past. So before he died, he wasn't using it. It went dormant. And according to my discussion with Mike Hansen, the guy at AOT, inactivity is dormancy. And
That's why we made him come for a permit.
That's it. Well, because it would be inconsistent. If your interpretation is correct and it's grandfathered, there's no need for a permit.
But it's two
It's
separate.
two
things.
different
It's zoning and plan, totally separate.
Can I have a point of information?
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
I'm lost. Are we in the deliberation part with the board? Because we seem to have ongoing public dialogue and I'm really confused about where we are.
Yeah, yes, we are in the board deliberation.
Okay, so you would normally, if you needed outside input, like you would call on them, like this time we would go back and forth typically, or?
Typically,
Okay.
if I needed information or more information from somebody from the public or from the applicant, I would ask them to speak,
Gotcha.
which is
Okay.
what I did.
Yep, no, and that, because it started off not like that, and then I'm just confused as to where we were.
I didn't know, I did not know the details of what the conversation was going to be.
Yes,
And after hearing Mr. Cunningham,
gotcha.
say, you know, you're misinterpreting the statute, I want information from him as to why he thinks the statute is being misinterpreted, so that will help inform our decision.
Okay. But we are in our deliberation.
We are in our deliberation.
Thank you.
The public part of the hearing has been closed.
Okay.
And I'll just add, Mr. Chairman, but it's a contradiction to, on the one hand, say it's grandfathered in, let's just go for it, and often require a new permit at the same time. That's a contradiction of the statute,
Which statute?
155E. Specifically, the provisions on, when a pit goes dormant.
My question is, does anybody actually know exactly when it became? I mean, that might be the last time he turned in that he excavated material. I mean, but was he still down there working? Was that the
I don't-
last,
I
was
don't
that the
know.
last intent to excavate he filed? Or did he file another one after that and passed away and
According
never
to
filled it up?
Julie, that was the last one. He told me.
Okay.
Huntley, says the ministry. I would just summarize my thing is that you guys know, I mean, Jim Keller was just here the other day to see you guys for a site plan. But he had to do his zoning stuff first. So the question needs to be answered, is zoning gonna allow it, number one? And I ruled that zoning would allow it because of the grandfather. Planning, second question. Will we allow it? And I said, it's been dormant for more than 2 years, he needs a new permit.
So they're separate.
I would go further and I would say that the new permit is required not because it's dormant for 2 years, but because it's a new owner.
I would say if it was continuously operating, it would be here.
But in this case where it has, you know, a period of time has elapsed.
More than 2 years, according to 155E. What do you think?
Well, I have to agree with Rob, I guess, because he did do the work to come up with them. That's real great.
It truthfully,
Because I don't believe it was, because it never was used as anything else other than gravel pit.
And the material
The
still
exception is
stockpiled there.
still there, and there's still
Again.
material stockpiled
Yeah.
that they pay taxes on.
Yeah, and our regulations also stipulate that if you tend to abandon the use, you have to claim it.
Yeah, we're claiming with it some months.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And nothing, and it's not
Nothing to
reclaimed.
be claimed.
Mm-hmm. Bill?
It's great.
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, I think they're separate and distinct.
so would you say it's grandfathered?
Yes, I would.
Kate, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, and I'm gonna add, because it's pretty easy to use the Google to look up what happened. He had a lot of illness, so you're not just, I think there are mitigating circumstances, it's grandfathered, but also, you know, I'm gonna minus out the 2 years of COVID, and I think if you go to court, they're gonna wanna be reasonable about it, I think, but, you have to grandfather it.
Whitney, do you want to weigh in with your thoughts? You don't have to, but
Yeah, no, I was just kind of poking around at this 155E. I also agree that it's grandfathered too.
Jim, any thoughts?
Or what period? Guidelines say it's grandfather.
Just a second.
I'd even go one step further. If Mr. Coffey doesn't take sand out of his for 2 years, does that mean he's abandoned it?
I don't think so. Perhaps there's no demand for sand
Right.
for whatever reason.
Right.
So. Board, do you want to vote on the question, or can we just say consensus, it's grandfather? Consensus, okay. Consensus of the board is that this project is grandfathered. And just so everybody knows, our decisions can be appealed to the ZBA. You have 30 days to lodge an appeal with them. And if you don't agree with their decision, they can either kick it back to us, or you can go to court. What is it?
Well, no, it's 30 days from when we make a decision on the application. It's
Right.
not 30 days from today, because we made a decision on whether it goes to zoning.
Okay, right, yeah, well, I'm assuming,
That's my second, I'm gonna make a second one pretty quickly.
okay,
And we continue this hearing until we at least get a reclamation plan. Because we don't have a reclamation plan. We can't do the aquifer one because that's a state permit. He's gonna have to get the state permit, so that would be a condition if we were to approve it. But we've got to have a reclamation plan. That's more than we're going to put pond in.
What about some of the other conditions that Steve talked about?
Those would be conditions that we're continuing the hearing because we need to get something.
Yeah.
From the applicant. Those conditions would come after when we have the continued hearing, where we would say, okay, the 7 to 7 hours, you can't crush stone more than 2 weeks out of the year or whatever. But I'm looking for a continuation, which we can do, right?
yes,
But it hasn't been 60 days.
65, yes.
65 days yet, so we can continue this hearing. In order, is there anything else we need from Mr. Conkey that we don't have yet?
Not necessarily from Mr. Conkey, but I'd like to know if we're gonna do a continuation and answers some of these questions. You know, we have a noise ordinance already, and it's not an exciting noise ordinance, so no one's fussed about it so far. So I guess limiting hours, I want to know, was this a prior condition, right? Like, are we asking for some to expand? So if this pit obviously was used and some of these folks were here and Eastman was obviously there, you know, were they asking for the same things then, or are they asking for new conditions? So getting some information on the past practices and the past expectations, because there must have been somewhere in that great set of boxes, maybe. There was a.
I'm guessing
No.
not.
Not, no,
Because the pit was in operation
Before.
prior to 1979.
so they didn't need a
One.
pit
It
permit
was
at all.
prior to Eastman.
So then none of these conditions, I guess that answers it
Right.
then, right? So
Yeah,
none of,
None of these conditions were
Right.
there because Eastman wasn't there.
and then,
Right.
Yeah.
We had zoning till, and we didn't have zoning until 1990.
and I guess one of my other questions, because I wrote down some of the things, like, I mean, there's no reason, like, he's not required to let people truck out to a pond, essentially trespass, right? He could post his property.
That's true.
It is posted.
It is
It is
posted.
posted.
So if they're up there, they're trespassing, so that takes
Right.
care of that question.
He
Okay,
would have to give them permission.
permission. Okay. No, I just like, I want to look through the list because I'd like to not go into continuation and then re-hit
No.
these.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
logging operation in there, so we don't want people in there. Somebody gets hurt, you know, it's like, oh,
Or
Tree
goes
fell
right
down,
on
right?
your skidder.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think you can tell a property owner they can't firearms, can you?
No, you can't, you can't, but you can't. No.
I
In the
don't think,
state of New Hampshire, you can shoot a gun wherever you want to shoot a gun.
as long as it's
As long
outside
as
the
it's not
curtilage.
within, as long as it's not within residences,
300 yards.
300 yards.
Yep. Okay,
Not what I requested. It wasn't that
I know you didn't, I know what you
firearm
requested,
training.
that there not be firearm training by any police organization. It sounds like you don't want to have them there anyways because of your liability.
right.
That would be an additional use of the property. And he would have to come for a site plan. He might have to go to
No.
zoning.
no,
No,
Um,
because you cannot regulate that. We ran into that with the shooting thing. You cannot regulate shooting guns. It's up to the property owner.
you have to ask really
We
nice.
can't make that a
Make nice and
condition.
friendly with your neighbor.
Right,
That's
And
what-
lots of times they don't.
exactly.
And then one of the other ones that I saw was the question about, allowing conservation on, and I don't think we need to be making that decision. If
No.
he's declined, that's his property, that's his choice.
Right.
That's an advisory board, so there's no reason we have to make a ruling on that
No,
either,
I
right?
mean, we cannot tell Mr. Conkey who he can allow on his land, or that he has to allow anyone on his land.
And then Eastman can do the trucks, because they already don't allow trucks, and, I mean, I can't find my way out of there anyways, so God bless everybody. Would never go in there with a truck, but, so I think like that's,
I mean, I don't use it now and I'm a lot
Mhm.
closer, so it's
and
like,
I mean, equipment storage, I don't know. Like, that's a pretty questionable one, like, we just recently did, subdivision in which the owners are kind of reclaiming a hot mess. Up on the corner of Grafton Pond Road, and they own, and so they're going to drive some equipment home sometimes, like, I don't think we can. I don't know,
Well, he's not asking for that. He's asking for there not be equipment that is not his equipment, or that stuff being hauled into there in order for it to be a contractor yard. This is not a permit for a contractor yard, it's
Must
a
be a change
permit
of
for a
use.
gravel pit, and it would be a change of
Okay.
use.
so that's covered,
Right,
okay.
and we could put that in as a condition, because I'm sure you don't have a problem with that.
no, I have no problem with that.
Right,
I mean, but I do own 25 pieces of equipment and
right, but it's your
15
equipment.
trucks.
If you
Yes, it's
wanted
my
to park
equipment.
them there, we can't say
Right.
no.
And there is several vehicles down there now that are left behind by Mr. Hastings.
Right.
Jim?
Yeah, no, I said I agree with his grandfather. I think it would be possible to change the things. You see more structure impact on the aquifer. So,
Yeah. That has to be a state permit though.
Yeah, that's
what the state- They're gonna, which will be a condition if we were to approve it.
Right.
That he has to get that state permit, which is going to look at the aquifer.
Yeah.
And make a decision on the aquifer.
And they'll also do the test holes.
If it has water and all of that. Right.
So I guess I'd make a motion to continue this hearing or,
But before you make the
Okay.
motion, let's ask Mr. Conkey how long it will take you to put together a detailed reclamation plan.
I will have to call an engineer tomorrow
Rob can help you too.
to see with
With some
that.
references, because the woman across.
I mean, I have one from my other pit.
Okay,
I had it done through CLD before, so it's,
Okay.
it's,
so with the first week, the first
Right.
meeting in
it's just a little bit more time and a little bit more money,
September,
you know, a little bit more
would you
time.
be able to do the first week in
I'm
September?
assuming, but I don't know what their schedule is
So
or
we
any of
could,
that kind of stuff.
would we continue it until our
What-
first meeting in September?
Let's do it to September 14.
Okay,
And if you're not going to be able to make that date, let us know.
Yep.
We can come back. You don't necessarily have to
Yeah.
be here. We can reopen the hearing
Mhm.
and then continue it until another date. So
Okay. I
if
mean,
it, this is for out there in the land of, public. If it's going to be canceled, or if you can't make it, we will post it on the Enfield website.
Yep.
Okay, because it's continued, it doesn't get, all the abutters do not get another letter saying it's been continued. So look on the EnfieldNH.us website. It'll have the agenda for the planning board. If you see on the September 14th, it's not on there, then that means, or we will put right on it that it's been
Will be
continued
continued.
again.
As a courtesy.
If it gets postponed, then can you send something to Steve also
Just as a courtesy.
as a courtesy?
That just to, I mean, that gives us two layers of, hopefully we can
Right.
get more people information. Because the goal is to get you guys good information.
So even
And have
if
you
you live
be
in
involved.
Grantham or Springfield, please look on the EnfieldNH.us.
Okay. Motion. Oh, Phil's making a motion. Continue this 14th of September. The 14th of September. At 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock.
Second,
Okay, motion has been made and seconded to continue this hearing to September 14th at 7 o'clock. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Okay, we are going to recess this hearing until 7 o'clock on September 14th.
we're gonna continue to.
Continue. I have two sets.
Well, did it go return receipt? So what I've learned is, well, no, so the trick is, don't send it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging me. Appreciate
Oh,
it.
that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment. They're
Thank
very
you.
Thank you
informative.
for, being there.
I'm not picking up that letter. I got kicked out of my grandfather's home, you know what? I didn't go get that letter.
Good luck. All right, let's take board members, we'll take a very short recess and then we'll reconvene. Finish up the agenda.
What happened to the conservation member not getting notified because they were reminded to remember last week? The appointed member, they didn't tell the meeting. He asked me if he missed the meeting and I said, they should have sent you a packet and an agenda. And it's he says, so I think that might have been. For sure.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
You know, whatever gets submitted.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of take it if you.
We'll get it to you.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't trust the both.
Oh, my gosh. I mailed scholarship checks to for kids.
Well,
I
the
feel
other
so
thing
bad.
is, these are the folks that said they didn't get it, send it to the abutter, and once you have to send it to the abutter's property. See their name right
Yeah.
there. Well, it's the property that you have
Yeah.
on
That's
Folks within 200 feet of.
Extended.
Of body getting.
PO box.
Right.
PO box.
Okay. I know, it's tricky. Look at that butter list.
Post office. Right, to begin with. I have
Rob?
those on.
Yeah, they do it. Yeah.
It was
Can
sent
you,
to the PO
can you
box.
call them
We get our mail.
and see if they have an email address that you could show proof of sending to?
Yes, she has it
As
right.
soon as I figured it out, I turned it right there. and it-
But it's right there.
It's all right.
As long as we have to
certify we covered, an email wouldn't be.
No, right?
No, I'm just saying, you know,
The state appreciated everybody. I'll get you my letter.
It's just glad to see you. We are glad to see you stay.
Yeah, right.
You've been out in the sun too much.
Good to see you, Steve.
I gotta inspect, the entire property.
The entire property, yeah. You've been inspecting the pond a lot lately, right?
Where all the skeletons are hidden.
We talked about that for a while.
okay,
You guys.
planning board, can we come back to order, please?
He was from the town.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
He's the boss of my best friend. Yeah, my friend Brian Harding. works for him.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Okay, folks,
I'm back.
so we're back, and next is meeting minutes from July 13th. What?
We don't have.
No conceptuals.
No conceptuals. Okay, July 13th.
July 13.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
I have some
I know you do,
comments.
but we have to put it on the floor.
All right,
Need a second?
second,
Right here, second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
I'll abstain.
discussion. I have some comments. Line 114, 115. I don't know what Mr. Godhart actually said. And this would be something for you, Whitney, to check. I believe he was talking about expansion of a non-residential floor space. Line 114 and 115. So I'll just go back and listen to the tape on that. Line 188, 189. I am not clear, actually it's line 189. I am not clear who is he and who is them.
Oh, he is,
He would be Mr. Yeager.
and them is the
Yeah.
zoning board.
Okay,
Just,
Yeah.
I fixed both.
Right.
Just now.
Fixed both.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Mr. Aaron's line 234. I don't think his title is Inspection Services and Facilities Planning Administrator.
I'm gonna pull that off the website.
You pulled that off the website?
I think so.
It's a really obnoxious title.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that was on the website.
all right.
He
I
has like
accept
a
that.
particular,
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, really, I was there because I had to figure out the spelling.
Okay.
So we should give our feedback to the town manager and select board that we could give it words.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would.
It's not here. Any other comments on the July 13 minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
I have to
Opposed?
abstain.
One abstention,
I'll abstain as well.
two abstentions. Okay. Why did nobody want to?
These are a work of art.
Yeah,
Thankless job.
really impressive.
We're thankful.
So
Okay.
we're not gonna
very
thank you.
I thank her.
Especially like the lineup.
See how I'm not getting it?
Next,
I know.
July 27 minutes.
Put on the floor.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded to put the minutes on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm on the naughty list. Sorry, guys.
Motion is on the floor. My comments, line 83. What is Lappin plaster? Lath. That's what I thought. It's Lath. Lath.
Yeah,
Find it, Whitney?
bottom of the page.
Line
Page
83.
For those that go to the 1800s house.
It's on the 20 minutes.
Yeah, bottom of page 3.
Oh, yeah, okay.
LATH.
I don't know, of course, here.
Yeah, there is names, okay?
Line 141. It is Liberty Utility, not library.
Yeah.
Good catch.
Library utilities. That's also.
So who do you write your electric bill check?
The library, come on.
We try to forget about.
That's often spelled.
Line 150. Mr. Kelleher expects 9 by 18 per space. I think you meant specs or specified.
Spect. Yeah.
Spec, okay.
Yep.
Good fix too. It gets better. It does. Line 163 in the middle. To signal the plow driver how to push snow further, not now to push. Okay.
Push the snow further.
Line 174. They are H2O rated. What is that?
Go back and look. I'll go back and look at.
Anybody know what H2O rating is for a weight rating? Okay, clarify that one.
What he said though. Remember him saying that?
Did you say they're H2O rated?
Yeah, he said they're H2O rated. I went, it's fine.
Why didn't we ask him at the time?
Wait, in reference, what's the,
It's the weight, because we said, is it gonna, they won't crash through it, if no, it's H2O rated.
oh, yep, it's a traffic, it's, is it, or, yeah, H2O or traffic rated, heavy
Yeah.
duty traffic rating, yep.
Traffic rating, H2O.
H2O.
Yeah.
Yep, it
Okay,
says H2 and it looks like an O as in
Right.
it's zero.
That's the H20 basically.
20, yes.
It's 2O, it's H20.
Oh, yep, H dash.
line 176. It's Bollards, BOLS. And that appears several other times,
It was 176.
6 in the parentheses.
But New Englanders call them ballards.
I didn't know what that if they're not.
So you do a universal search because it appears misspelled a couple of other times. BO.
Yeah.
Bollards. Okay. Line 227. They will need to have a roof gutter with a drain pipe to dry and prevent some of the water along the sidewalk.
It was probably supposed to be the word try.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, Bollards and Ballards again
Yeah, I'll
on
just do a universal.
279 and 284. Okay, here's one that I thought was interesting. Line 322. You talk about a lumbar, which is.
Yeah.
So that appears a couple of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do a universal. find a-
And, but then in other places, you've got lumber, lumber, so
Yeah, she's got it both ways.
I don't know what distracted you. Line 332 and 333. Mr. Taylor said this was approved 4 years ago for the dog kennel. I couldn't figure out what we approved for the dog kennel.
Oh, that place. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what.
Oh, the place in general. Oh, okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
The building was approved as
Right.
a dog kennel.
From a road length to a dog.
As a dog. Yeah, but it never became. one.
Actually, it was a doggy day. It was actually.
He did. Oh, did
He had a few customers.
Okay.
Think of it.
It was a doggy day.
But except for dry salt. They kept it up. But that's what this new setup. Okay, that's a good. She doesn't like it though.
That's it.
Got us like 40 people.
I move we approve this, the July 27 minutes as amended.
Somebody get a second?
Come on,
that?
Brad.
That was on the table.
I can, I can abstain.
Oh, I will then.
You can second the motion.
I'll second the motion then.
Okay.
Damn it.
Brad seconded it.
All right, Brad seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstention?
That'd be
Yeah,
me.
I'll abstain.
Whitney's
Abstain.
abstaining. Okay.
We do have a, yeah, we have a majority of who was here that night, so,
Yeah.
okay.
Master plan. Finally, last week, we had a meeting with Brandy Saxon.
Yep.
Rob, myself, and Lindsay. She gave us, pretty much where she is up to date, which included the start of who's responsible to do what and when timetable matrix. Still having some problems on photographs for the economic development section. And due to a full calendar, Lindsay is not available to help move this project along till, what did she say, mid-September? Or actually after the primary vote, because she's got to deal with that. So Rob and I are gonna try to talk, and we'll see if it's possible to get the master plan task force together between now and the middle of September. I personally am in favor of that. Rob kind of on fence, Lindsay's a no. So, we'll see what happens. Old business. Nope, I think we have any old business. No. New business. Also none.
We do have an application for the next meeting for a boundary line adjustment. It's a Scott Sanborn project. You'll love it.
Oh, good.
That should be easy.
Yeah, it's actually, you know Sarah Mirsky? You know?
I know she is.
Yeah. It's her property on that. Algonquin.
Okay.
It's gonna go from 3 to 2 lots.
That makes sense.
So they're gonna share the 2 neighboring properties with merge the third.
Yeah.
Half and half after their lots.
That would make some people so.
Yeah, they're still all gonna be non-conforming, so it's no big deal.
But they'll be more.
But they'll be like,
There'll be less
and then they will
non-conforming.
build on it.
Yeah, exactly, because there's no way.
They'll be bigger.
3 acre long on Crystal Lake.
Right.
There's only 2 properties on the lake that conform. Maybe 3.
Maybe. Yeah.
Mine's not one.
No.
Okay,
There was some aspirational thinking there.
it was. Anything else? Somebody wanna, next
I-
meeting, October or August 24?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get this year over.
I'll make the motion, we adjourn.
I second.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor?
I.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned at 8:55.